Hey, it's David Farmer, and today we're going to be talking about Digital Dealer and my session about how you can change your used vehicle acquisition strategy. Hey, I just got completed finishing my presentation at Digital Dealer, and I want to be able to share it with you. Hopefully you made it out to Digital Dealer, and if you didn't, I'm going to be able to share with you today all the information about this presentation. Actually, it might take 2 or 3 videos to put this all together, so let's consider this a part 1 of a recap for Digital Dealer. So my presentation, Change Your Used Vehicle Acquisition Strategy. This was designed to be able to highlight the reason that dealers really need to look at different ways to be able to acquire used vehicles. Now, I know that times are tough. Inventory is tough. New vehicles are hard to get from the manufacturer, some OEMs more than other. I was on actually a phone call today with a Honda dealership, a large volume Honda dealership, and they are struggling for new car inventory. So getting used cars is extremely important. And the traditional strategy to go out and buy used cars by going to the auction and holding up your hand and buying cars is not a viable way to be able to stock the kind of inventory that dealers need to be successful. If you can't sell used cars and take in trades of old cars, what can you do? Now, as you may know, we have a technology called Express Cash Offer. And this technology is designed specifically for dealers to be able to compete with large volume used vehicle retailers to be able to buy more cars directly from consumers. So my session, which we're going to be kind of doing an overview of the session, is going to be talking about best practices on how you can implement these strategies to be able to buy more cars directly from consumers, to be able to build your used vehicle inventory, which is imperative for success, especially in these times. So as I started to put this presentation together, I came across kind of a funny a funny scene in a Showtime series called Super Pumped. It's all about Uber and Travis, the original CEO for the company, and it was just a crazy story. But one of the scenes in the first episode, and it's towards the end, I want to say it's the last 5 or 8 minutes. There's about a 2-minute scene where he's talking to the mayor of San Francisco about how times have changed. And I use this to kind of model my opening for Digital Dealer because I think it's fit so well. So I'm going to kind of go through that presentation and then kind of do a review of the other things. So this is not me doing the same presentation I did at Digital Dealer. This is me doing an overview of the content. And like I said, I'm going to break it up over 2 or 3 different videos. Maybe 4, depending on how long I want to keep these. So, with that said, going into it, to get the audience attention, I started with the word horseshit. So I'm going to start with that. I'll go through that first little bit, and then I'll come back in the end. So this is how it goes. Horseshit. There were piles of it all over every street in the U.S. Literally horseshit. Until about 1908. When the horse and carriage got replaced by the automobile, when Henry Ford saw the future and made it so and produced the Model T, generally regarded as the first affordable automobile which gave car travel available to middle-class Americans. And back then, cars were sold directly by manufacturers to consumers through mail order, department stores, and traveling salespeople. Of course, the future doesn't last, right? And over the years, direct sales by automakers to consumers has been limited in most states by franchise laws that require new cars to be sold only by licensed and bonded, independently owned dealerships. And for a while, times are fat. Everybody ate. Dealers are licensed to sell new vehicles and took in trades of old cars and then resold them at a profit. Or sold them at auction, and everybody is making money at every point in the transaction. But just like the horse and carriage, eventually the dying day comes. And that's where we're at today. With companies like Carvana, CarMax, Shift, Vroom, and other giant used car retailers to glimpse the future and usher it in, allowing customers to get a great price for their private vehicle without going through the friction of a traditional sales process at a new car dealership, because that is what they are offering, the future. Your customers can get a great price for their private vehicle and then have it picked up right at their home or work. It's winners in commerce on both sides of the equation. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to go down in the history books as an innovator, or do you want to let the streets in front of your beautiful dealership get flooded with horseshit one more time? Because that is what the giant used car retailers are hoping for. So anyways, that was my opening for Digital Dealer. And then I started to go into what is happening right now with companies like Carvana. They're doing what Uber did to the transportation space, is they're disrupting it. Now, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with Carvana right now. I actually checked their stock price today, and I think they're down to $30. They were well over $300 just a couple months ago. Yesterday, to date this presentation, it's May 12th, they laid off 2,500 employees over a Zoom call. So they have their problems. They are not the end-all, be-all of a threat when it comes to automotive, but they are indicative of what is changing in the industry. If it's not Carvana, it's CarMax. If it's not CarMax, it's Autonation. CarMax, Autonation, Lithia, Sonic, all of these big, giant public corporations, private corporations are doing more to be able to buy cars directly from consumers to be able to stock their used car inventory. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is how big companies like this are looking to outperform the existing competitors in automotive retail, and what you can do about it to compete with them. So as I started going through this presentation, you can see here that, we have a lot of things that are going on in automotive right now. And, the car business really has changed more in the last 24 months than it has in the last 24 years. New vehicle inventory, stocking level, volatility, used vehicle value, hyperinflation. There's so much going on that makes the car business extremely difficult, probably more difficult now than I've ever seen it in my career. You might want to go back to the 70s when we had, the gas crisis. And, I'm sure selling cars back then, especially the big ones, were pretty challenging. So with that, there's a lot of things going on right now, but the most important thing is understanding what these giant used car retailers are doing from a used vehicle acquisition strategy. And companies like Carvana, CarMax, Autonation, Vroom, these companies are changing the purchase funnel as we know it, where in years past, what we've done is we've looked at the way that consumers are interacting with car dealerships when it comes to the disposition of their current vehicle. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about what is happening with these big, giant used car retailers. So in this slide right here, you can see that in 2021, the quarter one for CarMax, they sold 452,000 vehicles total. Now, 270,000 were at retail, the balance at wholesale. Now, they're making about as much on a wholesale transaction as they are on a retail transaction. So I'm sure it's a lot easier to sell wholesale than it is retail. So for them, whether they sell and get rid of a vehicle on a wholesale basis or retail basis, I don't think it really matters, especially when they're making the same amount of money in both cases. But quarter one, 2021, they sold 270,000 retail vehicles. Now, total purchased 341,000 vehicles directly from consumers. And out of those, 163,000 were purchased through their instant online tool. So customers that start the process by going through their dealership website and going through that instant online appraisal. Now we can look at quarter 2, look at quarter 3, look at quarter 4, and you can see that there's a trend for them buying more vehicles, especially through their instant online system. Actually, they purchased over 1.4 million vehicles from consumers in 2021. Half of those, over 700,000 vehicles, are purchased directly through their instant online appraisal technology. So as a publicly traded used vehicle retailer, they are looking at driving up the ability to buy more cars from consumers. Now, if you look at Autonation, Autonation is the third largest used vehicle retailer. They sold 304,364 vehicles in 2021. That was up 26% over 2020. And on a quarter 4 earnings call, Michael Manley, the new company's CEO, discussed a lot of things, but one of the things that he talked about is used vehicle sales and the importance to them as a company for so used vehicle sales. Now, he said that 90% of all the vehicles that were sold at retail were self-sourced. Now, of course, that is going to include trade-ins, but increasingly, he said, through the We'll Buy Your Car program. Now, also, he talked about in this his fourth quarter earnings call about the Autonation USA Superstores. Now, they only have 10 open right now, but in the next few years, they expect this number, they're planning on this number, to be in operation 130 different locations. So these are used vehicle superstores, 100 going from 10 to 130. So how are they going to stock these locations with used vehicles? Well, increasingly, it is going to be through the We'll Buy Your Car program on Autonation.com. They're betting big for used cars. They know how to source them, and they're going to ramp that up and continue and increase the amount of cars that they're buying directly from consumers. So they're also looking at changing the customer behavior when it comes to the disposition of their current vehicle before buying their next. All right, so going forward a little bit here, we can start to look at Carvana. And I know there's a lot of craziness going on about Carvana right now. We don't even know if they're going to even be around, if they're going to go through bankruptcy. And I think a lot of dealers are hoping that this happens and kind of expecting that to happen. But one thing I can tell you is that these guys have built an incredible business. They've gone from, in 2014, just selling over 2,000 vehicles. 5 years ago, 2017, they sold 40,000. And in 2021, they sold over 400,000 vehicles, all at an average gross per unit of over $4,500. So I don't think they're going away anytime soon. They're going to have their stumbles. They're going to have their challenges, like any new business, especially growing as fast as these guys have. But I would not be planning and putting a strategy in place if I was a dealer hoping that Carvana goes out of business. What I would do is I would expect them to continue what they're doing and succeed and plan accordingly. Worst case, you're ahead of the game. Best case, you're killing them, right? Okay, so with that, let's look at in 2021. They sold 92,000 vehicles in quarter 1, 107,000 in quarter 2, 111 in quarter 3, 113,000 in quarter 4, selling over 425,000 vehicles. That was like a 75% increase over 2021, right? Now, in the first quarter of 2022, they had an additional 14% increase over 2021. So, I mean, the trajectory that they have is in solid footings, right? Now, they had a couple milestones that were important to notice just this year in 2022. January, they sold their 1 millionth vehicle. In March, they purchased their 1 millionth vehicle from consumers. Now, also, as part of all the news that's happening right now with Carvana, is they just completed a $2.2 billion acquisition of Odessa Auctions, the second largest auction company in the U.S., got 56 locations. They facilitated the transactions of over 1 million vehicles in 2021. Now, with an additional $1 billion investment, Carvana plans on transforming these 56 Odessa locations into IRCs, which Carvana calls inspection and reconditioning centers, IRCs. So they're going to add 56, more than doubling the amount of IRCs that they have right now. So they plan on having an output of over 3 million units when this takes place. So what is most important here is that Carvana now, with these 56 locations, with this acquisition of Odessa, puts them within 100 miles of like 75% of all U.S. population, within 100 miles, and within 200 miles of nearly everybody, 94% of the U.S. population. So why is this important? Well, what they have found out is when they start to fail, and when their business model starts to fail, is when they are more than a couple hundred miles away from the consumer. The logistics to get a vehicle to that customer or pick up a vehicle from that customer gets much more challenging. So simply put, if they're closer, it's going to be shorter delivery times. It's going to be easier to be able to deliver and pick up cars that they purchase from consumers. That's going to make the whole transaction more profitable for them, and it's going to drive customer happiness, which is going to be a big part of their success. Now, the reason I've shared all of this information with you is to really illustrate that there really is a threat by the largest used vehicle retailers out there to the traditional new vehicle franchise dealer and some of the smaller independent used car retailers. That they're changing the way that consumers behave. Now, in years past, when a customer thinks about buying a car, we can look at the purchase funnel and know that, well, they start to think about, well, what do I want to buy? And then where do I want to buy it? And then when do I want to buy it? So they're asking these questions. Now, with the amount of customers that have a previous vehicle that they're looking to replace, what's starting to happen now is this purchase funnel that consumers have had is starting to change to, when I first start thinking about buying a vehicle, I think about that I need to sell mine first. Let me sell my car, and then I'll go out and buy a new car. Now, this necessarily isn't any different than in the thought process that customers have had over the years. I remember when I was selling cars in the 90s, and I mean, it was almost comical to think about that customers would come into a dealership and they would not bring their trade. I mean, it's like they read the book, How to Buy a Car, and chapter 1 is don't tell them that you have a trade-in. Get a price on the vehicle first, and then drop the trade-in afterwards. We used to call it parachuting the trade-in, right? So the desire for a customer hasn't really changed in how they want to handle their trade. But what has happened is the viability of selling a vehicle first. Now, I actually sold my car personally to Carvana a little over a year ago and went through the process. So, I mean, I know what it's like to do it. And I was able to get not only a better deal, but a much more frictionless experience from Carvana. And then I went out and bought my next vehicle. Even with the tax savings, it worked out in my benefit to do it that way. So, looking at what this purchase funnel has been in the past, this is the micro moments that we're looking at right here from Google, when we're looking at the awareness and the consideration phase, and then the ready to buy phase. And traditionally, the awareness consideration was, hey, I need to buy a car. What make, what brand segments do I want to consider? And then I start to think about, model consideration, and then potentially thinking about what is going to cost me, and then what deal am I looking for, and then finally the dealership selection, and then getting down kind of into the nitty gritty. So it's at that point, kind of late in the stage of this purchase process, that the trade is going to come into play. And it is like halfway through the sales process in a traditional dealership that we address the trade. But what really is happening now is the customer has this really viable option to sell their car first, and they are doing it. 1.4 million vehicles sold directly to CarMax in 2021, over 700,000 through their instant online appraisal tool. 90% of all vehicles sold by Autonation were self-sourced through trade-in, but increasingly through the We'll Buy Your Car program. And this is just two out of many very successful dealership groups that are looking at increasing the ability to buy cars directly from consumers to stock their used vehicle inventory. Now, why is that, you ask? Well, let's look at the advertising of how customers are how companies like Carvana, CarMax, Vroom, Autonation are advertising to customers to be able to change their behavior. So they will consider selling their vehicle first before buying their next. So this video right here is from Carvana. 63 million views or something like that on YouTube, 20 million more than other commercials that they have on their YouTube channel. And then there's other spots that talk about selling cars directly to Carvana. This just happens to be one of them. I'll go ahead and play this for you right now.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've created a brand new way for you to sell your car. Whether it's a year old or a few years old, we want to buy your car. So go to Carvana and enter your license plate, answer a few questions, and our techno wizardry calculates your car's value and gives you a real offer in seconds. When you're ready, we'll come to you, pay you on the spot, and pick up your car. That's it. So ditch the old way of selling your car and say hello to the new way at Carvana.
All right, so that is Carvana. Let's go ahead and take a look at what CarMax is doing.
We're Carvana, the company.
When you really, really want something, it's hard to wait.
Come on, Greg.
That's why CarMax gives you an instant online offer for your car. It's real, good for 7 days, and we'll buy your car even if you don't buy one of ours. The way it should be. It's CarMax.
All right, so that's CarMax. And for my presentation on Digital Dealer, as I was putting this slideshow together, I came across another Carvana video that kind of struck me funny. I mean, it kind of made me think, okay, so here I am sitting on stage talking about how companies like Carvana are changing our industry, how they're doing something different, and it reminded me of this video. So I'm gonna go ahead and play a little bit for you right now.
And that's just basic wavy guy maintenance, right? Next up, Carvana.
Oh boy.
Carvana just doesn't seem to understand how the test drive works. They give their customers 7 days. And if they don't...
So anyways, I digress. All right, let's go ahead and keep on going here.
And that's just basic wavy guy maintenance, right? Next up, Carvana.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, oh boy. All right. So the next thing I want to chat about is advertising. So of course we're looking at the TV spots there, or the video spots, whether it's digital video or on TV, cable, etc. Another way that companies like Carvana, CarMax, Vroom are looking to change consumer behavior is through advertising messages on social media. Facebook is a great way to be able to advertise to consumers, and they are doing it. Now, it's a cool way to be able to go in and see how these companies or any company is utilizing Facebook to advertise to consumers. So if you go to any Facebook page, from there, if you go into page transparency and then go into ads library, what you're going to be able to find is all of the ads. Now, here's an example of what CarMax is doing. They have many different variations of the ad sets that they're using for advertising this We'll Buy Your Car program. And really the goal here is to have a bunch of different variations so we can connect with different people in different ways. Also to reduce any ad fatigue that a customer might get over a period of time. So they change up the ads. And we recommend that you do the same thing, that you look at creating multiple different ads to connect with people in different ways. And instead of just having one ad that ultimately gets stale, because you have to over impression when you only have that one variation. So here's this is what CarMax is doing. I recommend that you go out and take a look at yourself. Another thing you want to look at is Autonation. There's another big provider or a big public company looking to increase the amount of used vehicles that they're buying and selling. Keep in mind, between now and the next 3 or 4 years, Autonation plans on having 126 locations for their used vehicle superstore. So if you look at the top 126 markets, that pretty much covers every market in the United States, and probably going to be one of those used vehicle superstores pretty close to your dealership. So that's going to be, they're going to look to continue to increase the amount of cars that they're buying. They're doing it through advertising and technology on their dealership website. Lots of different ways to be able to communicate that message. So what we're going to be talking about now is this idea of instant online appraisals. And we're actually going to break here. So this is going to be the end of video 1. And then we're going to pick up in the next video talking about what can we do about this. So in this video, we really we examined the issues, right? We talked about what Carvana, CarMax, Vroom, Shift, Lithia, Sonic, Asbury, what are they doing as a company? There's a huge focus on used vehicle sales because new vehicle inventory is going to be tight for the foreseeable future. The business model has changed. The ability to acquire vehicles for your used car inventory just by trading them in on your new vehicle sales and or just going out to the auction to buy vehicles, or maybe even going to rental car companies to buy those off rental vehicles. They're not getting rid of their vehicles because they can't replace them with new vehicles. So that's kind of dried up as well. So you need to, as a dealership, figure out a new used vehicle acquisition strategy. This just happens to be, in my opinion, the very best. Buy them directly from consumers, compete with these large, giant used car retailers. So in the next video, we're going to get into what you can do about it, how you can utilize technology, building a process, some best practice recommendations for advertising, and then the last piece that we're going to talk about is best practices on the process. So what should your internet salespeople what should they be doing? What process should they be implementing? How to handle the lead, how to pick up the phone, schedule appointments to get customers into the dealership, to get that next step in the process to buy more cars, how to present figures, overcome objections. So we have a lot of information I want to share with you. So I'm going to end this video on this note right here. I appreciate your time, as I always do. Now, you're going to find this video plus many others at intice.com.